let's try to write some functions. So again, functions I have written here. Let's write a small function. Uh, my functions. Okay. Now let's say I'm going to perform some operation of making coffee, right? So or making coffee. So I'll say print add water, right? Then I'll say print again. I'll say add sugar, sugar. Then I'll say print add water, sugar, and add. Okay, so let's say these are three lines of code which is executed each time I want to get coffee, right? Now let's say I first go and get coffee, I'll execute this and I'll get my output as this. Now if another person comes who again wants to get coffee, he will have to execute maybe these lines of code once again, right? Yes. And then if another person wants, he would have to put another line. So this doesn't look like a very good idea for few reasons. Why? It is increasing the lines of code, first of all. Second is that if I have to make some changes here, let's say before adding I also want to add one more statement, that add milk, for example. So I would have to go and make changes in all the places, right? So better way is to put all of this code in one place, and we call that one place as a function, and we can execute or we can perform that task of getting coffee by simply calling that function, and our job is done. So we save the number of lines of code, duplicate code we are saving, and plus it is easy to maintain code, because same code, if it is repeated a number of times, it's difficult to maintain it, right? If you have to make changes, if it is in one place, it's fairly easy to maintain a code. Okay, so let's, how does a function look like? Let me show a simple function. Okay, let me take a very simple function. Okay, let's make change in this one itself. So instead of this, I'll call coffee function, right? So here I'll say def make coffee, open bracket, close bracket, semicolon, colon, and hit enter. So if you will see, it is indented, the indentation or the space has been generated itself for me, right? Now here I will go and I'll put this statements. Where is that statement? My function. I'll take this and I will put it here. So I'll put it here, right? Now when I want to call this function, what I'll do is I will simply say make coffee. So this is how I'm going to call a function. Is that right? Yes, no. Now if I have to call a function once, so what will happen when the this program is getting executed? It will see that there is a def statement. Def is a keyword. It is used to define a function, and this function has three statements. So let's say I want to go and get a coffee. I execute this here, and uh, so this is calling of a function with bracket here. Okay, so this is def, name of the function, and the bracket, and once you start colon, underneath that whatever is indentated is part of the function which we are creating. So let's right click and run this program, run coffee. So I get this output. Now let's say another person goes and gets he wants coffee. So what will he do? Will he write the same lines again? No, he will simply go and copy and paste these lines of code here, and he can just call it again, right? So right click again. So now two times I have got the coffee without having to repeat the same lines of code. Is it clear? Can you please quickly write this program? Now this is a function which did not get any value. I just called function and I got an output, right? I got an output as a display of some values here, right? Now it is also possible. Now in the case of starting or turning on a coffee machine, Do you get any output? We don't get output, right? Do we get an output? We don't get output, right? So this is a function which does not return any value, right? I mean, if I start a machine, coffee machine, I don't get any output. Coffee machine will either turn on or off, right? But if I press a if I press a button which gives a coffee as an output, then in that case I get some output, right? So let's say I also specify here. Let's say I'll create one more function here, and I'll call it def strt coffee machine, and here I will just say uh, print. I'll say warm water and print warm up milk. Okay, right? So what I'm going to do is warm up, I will call it. So first of all, I'll call start coffee machine. While starting, it will do perform these two actions of warming up my water and milk, right? Now in the second case, what I'm doing is I say, instead of make coffee, I'll say get coffee. It will make more sense. So I'll call it get coffee, and I will copy and paste this here, right? So now in this second case, what I am also going to do is I'm going to return a value, return coffee here, right? Because when you say get coffee, you should also get an output. Is that right? So now if you get an output as a coffee, you have to put your coffee mug under the machine so that the coffee is filled in the cup. So I will say here mug 1 equal to this, and I'll say mug 2 equal to, this is my coffee mug. Now why I am storing that value from get coffee in mug? Because that function is returning a value for me, isn't it? Yes, no, I'm getting some output from that function. So that is called a returned value of that particular function, and that I'm storing in mug1, and I can then display that value here, which is print. Here I can say mug1 equal to comma mug1. Likewise you can do it for mug2 also. Is it clear? So in the first case, first function does not return a value, the second function is returning a value for you. Are we clear? Yeah. So there are two ways a function can be called: a function which returns no value and a function which returns a value. So in the first case, we don't get any return, and the second case we have a coffee return. Yes. So can you please quickly try this program? Okay, please look here. Let me give a different example so that it will make sense. So I'll go to this. I'll say CALCULATOR. Okay. Now I'm going to define a function here, def sum. Okay. And here I'll say colon. Now here I'll say where 1 comma where 2, right? And I'll say where, or let me call it sum, or let me call it where 3 equal to where 1 plus where of 2, right? And then I'm saying return of where 3, right? So what I have done so far is I have just defined a function which expects two variables as an input, and I am returning that sum. In the earlier case, I was just hard coding the value. Here I am returning the summation of where 1 and where 2. Now let's say I call that function sum with 10 comma 20 here, right? So it will call the function where 1 will be having value 10, where 2 will have value 20. Now it is returning a value to me, so I'll store it in sum1. So I'll say sum1 equal to this, and then I can say print of print of sum print of, right? So if I run this, I will get an output as 30. Yes. Now do you understand the value of return, what it means to return a value? Now if I call this method with a different value, let's say 30 comma 40, 40 here, and then I could assign it to sum 2 now, right? And then I'm going to add these two values, and I'll call it sum 2 here and sum 2 here, right? So if I execute this program, what will happen? This is the value I get. So the returned value after the addition of two values is the values being returned using the keyword return of Python. Yes, and that value I store in sum1 and sum2 and I display those values. Are we clear? You have brought up a good point here. So now in the case of start coffee machine, I don't explicitly say return, right? So what will happen if I execute this program? What will happen is that it will start from this line, right? It will call this function, it will execute this, and the control will return back to line number 11, right? So implicitly the control is always returning even if you don't say return by yourself, right? But in the second case you are explicitly returning a value. See, if a program is getting executed, it calls a function, the function should get executed and the control should come back from where it called the function, right, and resume the rest of the code. So return of control always happens by default, or implicitly it is done by the by interpreter or the Python. Okay, you don't have to do it explicitly, right? Here did I say return? I did not say, right? Still the control has to come back. So it's optional. Yes, even if you put, you are just returning the control back. That's what is happening. Yes, so it should be conditional. If so, condition return this, else return that. You can do that. So within this big function, we can put the loops, others. Yes, so all the statements that we have done so far prior to this, if, else, everything can go inside the function. Okay, function is a collection of statements, and any kind of statement can go inside there. Can you give some example using the loop? How you use loop in the function? Okay, yes. So just now we did for I in range of, let's say we did 5, right? Colon, yes. So I'll say print, I'll say I equal to comma I, right? So what will happen when you call start coffee machine? It will come here, it will print these two, and then it will execute the for loop for you as well, right? And in the for loop it will go 0 1 2 3 4 5. So all that, see, function is also a piece of code. You could write pretty much any statement, any correct or a valid statement, for loop, while loop, or any other operations that we have been doing, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and pretty much anything and everything can go in a function. So if I execute this, let's say what happens. So do you see that after doing this, it is basically printing those values, and then uh, so it's a logical execution happening. I call this, it went here, it did this, and it did 5 times. After it is done 5 times, then this line is executed. It went back here and it executed this lines. Then next line. So this is how it goes. Clear? So next thing that we are going to look at is scopes of variable in function. So what is meant by scope? Let's look at this program and then we will write it and see. So I will write it also, don't worry about it. So I have a function f1, I have a function f2, right? In this function I define a and I print a. In this I define b and I print b. So what does it mean? It means that let's say I have two boxes here, for example. Okay, let's say I have one box here and another I'll take a different colored box here, right? Whatever I define inside this box, let's say I define it some value inside this box here, it is not visible to other box, right? Yes, no? Yeah. So what I defined in this box will not be visible to other box and vice versa. So let me say I defined A here and B here. So function is like a block or a box. What is in one block or a box will not be visible to another. So if you will try to execute this program here, and I'll write it and show to you. So this is one box or a block. If I define A here, it is only visible in this block. Other one is visible in another block. So let's try to write that code. So I will say project. I will go here, and so I will create a new file and I'll call scope, SCOPE, of variable, variables. Okay, so let me define def. I'll call f1, or whatever name you want to give of your choice. Here I'll say where 1 equals to 10. Okay, and then I'll say print of where 1. Okay, now I also define one more function which I'm going to call as where function 2 here. I'll call it where 2, and I'll call it as also where 2, and I'll call this as well where to, right? Now how do we call a function? By simply typing the name of the function f1, right? And I'll say f2 here. So it will call those corresponding function and the execution will happen. Is that right? So right click, run as, I'll say where1 and where2 value. Now if I try to display where1 here, let us see what happens. I'll put where1 here, I'll put where1 here. So because we are using PyCharm as an editor, it has already prompted that this is red in color. It is unresolved reference. This is the editor which has already prompted us that there is a problem. But even then, let's execute this. So function 1, it will execute successfully, right? When it will come to function 2, it will execute this, but at line number 9 here, 8, it will give an error, right? So let's right click, run this scope variable. So what is the output? Let's see. We got this output, but then it says trace back. It says where 1 is not defined, right? It explicitly mentioned where in line number 8 here in function 2. Are we clear on this one? Yes, understood. So what you define in one block or one function, cannot be accessible or visible in another block or a function. Yes, it's not called private, it is called local variables. Okay? So if I give some other value to where in function 2, it will work, right? No. Even where 1 is not visible in function 2, where 2 is not visible in function 1. But if they are mutually exclusive, then I should be allowed to give same name to the different variables. Yes. So in this case, you can put here as where 1 as well. It would, here if you are doing where 1, then you will get, okay. So let's make a small change here. So let's make it 100. Okay. Now this where 1 and this is where 1. Now since it is two different blocks having same name, so this block is accessing 10 and another one is accessing 100. Okay, so this will work perfectly fine. Clear? So can you please try this, what we were originally trying? Okay, and I will put a hash here because it is not supposed to be working. So please try it out. So we have looked at a local variable. Now next is what if you want to define a global level variable, or variable which is accessible across different functions maybe. So I will copy this file and I'll paste it here. Sorry, not here. Control Z. So let me Control C, Control V here, right? And I'll call this as 2 for myself. I'll open this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a var 3 equal to 1000. or let's say 100 should be fine, right? Now this particular variable is neither is in scope of this function or this function, so it is a global variable for me, and it is accessible to both the functions here, right? So if I display this here, it should work fine for both the cases. So I'll say where 3, I'll make it where 3 here, and where 3 here, where 3 here, and here as well, right? So if you will look at this program, I have defined a var3 variable which is neither in function 1, function 2, but it is global to the entire program, and it is accessible to both the functions, right? Now if I run this program, it will give me a var3 of 100 value, right? Now this is, in fact, I can print it here as well, right? But I cannot print this value var2. Why? Because var2 is defined within the function. It is local to that block, and it is not visible outside that block, right? Yes, no. So I hope this makes sense. Now let's say I also define a var1 also here. So I'll say var1 equal to 200. All right. Now if I say var1 equal to 200, and then if I call function 1, it is saying var1 equal to 10, right? So if I display the value at line number 3 here, what will be the output? 10. According to it is 10, what will be the output? It will be 10 because local variable take precedence over global variable. It is like this. If I explain to you again with a diagram, so if I go to this one note here, let's say if I go here, and if I have a box here, let's say this is outer box which is global, this is inner box, right? So there is a here and there is a here, and this is me who is standing in this box. So which a is closer to me? The one in the inner box, which is a local variable, right? So local will have precedence over global, and therefore the value of this local variable will get displayed for me. Clear? Can you please quickly try this? Okay, so now next thing is what if I go back to my program here, and for some reason I want to make use of global variable which I have defined here. So let's say in my I'm here in my function f1. Here I have var1 here as well as I have here, right? So how do I make use of this particular var1? In that case I have to use a keyword called global. So I'll say global of that variable. Okay, and if I make use of this keyword global here, so I will say global of var1. If I do this, it means now I'm working on a global variable rather than a local variable, and now any change that I make is the change I'm making on the global variable, right? So can you by yourself make it one of the variable as global variable and use it in a function? Can you please try it how it works?